Today we're interviewing Nirit Rubenstein, CEO and co-founder of Dovely, but so much more than CEO and co-founder. But can you tell us a little bit about Dovely?
Sure. So Dovely is a automated credit platform that helps people improve their credit within seconds. So we do things from getting errors off your credit to giving you tips that are personalized to your credit to offering different products and services that might help you. So really for anybody looking to do anything to improve their credit or protect their credit, like LifeLock type solutions, then Dovely's the answer. It's kind of like Credit Karma on steroids.
Oh, I love that. And why did you start this?
So I was brought in by a private equity firm to run a traditional credit repair company, and I saw the need, but I hated the way we were solving the problem at that company. And so I kept thinking there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way. I met my co-founder, and within seconds, my brain went to, how do I get this guy's brain into a technology? And that was the very first kind of the impetus for the idea. He ended up coming to work with me. And then when we divested that company, we were going to start what is now Dovely. And I took a little detour, which we can talk about. But I felt like credit was following me everywhere I went. Whether I'm in a cab and the Uber driver's talking to me about not being able to afford a mortgage because the interest rates are too high because his credit isn't good, or being in a Target and line and someone's asking, do you want to get a red card? And the person responding, no, my credit sucks. I can't qualify for a red card. So I felt like it was following me everywhere I was going, and I knew how to solve the problem.
Can you re-say that part?
So I felt like it was following me everywhere that I was going, and that I knew how to solve the problem for millions of Americans. And I had a sense of responsibility that I wanted to bring this to market and help millions of Americans get ahead financially.
So there's a lot to unpack there. I want to ask a few more questions. You said that you were hired to solve the problem for another company, but you didn't agree with how they were solving it. Can you talk a bit about that and how you saw the problem differently?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is 70% of the U.S. population needs help with their credit. It's never taught. It's a very punitive system. It's very difficult to navigate. It's a black box, right? So on the one hand, you've got this insane, intricate problem that people don't know how to solve. And on the other hand, when you look at who's fostering the problem, the bureaus don't really care about the consumer. They make money by selling credit. The furnishers, which is like your credit card company or whatnot, they just care about making money off the highest value, right? They don't care about you personally as an individual. And then you have the credit repair companies, which traditionally are just predatory companies that take advantage of consumers, charge $150 a month for something that really they shouldn't be charging at all. And so when you look at the problem and all the different aspects of people that are creating the problem, nobody put the consumer in mind. No one said, let's create a solution with the consumer in mind and how we actually help the consumer. And for me, it was, how do you use technology and innovation to do that? Because that's the only way you can do it in a way that it can scale, right, financially. And so that was really, we were providing repair by having call center agents aggressively sell people on credit repair.
At the previous company, the private equity-backed company.
Right. And to me, it was, how do you charge someone who's financially in a rut $150 a month to send letters to credit bureaus? Like, the concept of doing that it was so hard for me to fathom. It was about, this is way too expensive. We're not nearly providing as much value as we need to be providing. And I hated the call center model. Like, I swore after that I will never run a call center ever again, because you incentivize sales reps to sell, and that is not aligned with providing value to the end customer, because they will do anything that they can to sell the deal, and it disconnects them from the consumer at that point.
It feels so ironic, right? The credit repair business historically has really not been supportive or helpful to the consumer.
It's the worst.
So.
Honestly, one of my missions is to make them all go out of business. Like, I hate the credit repair companies. I hate them. That's why when we get bucketed as credit repair, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard for me.
Yeah. You've used different words, but what is a better description than credit repair? So credit repair is predatory, not good for consumer. And how do you think about your category?
There's an aspect of what we do that's repair, but we're truly complete credit care, right? Yeah. So sometimes people need repair, but repair is just sending information and contesting things on your credit with the bureaus. But it's so much more than that. There's so many aspects to credit that are very counterintuitive, right? If you're a person that doesn't like debt, for example, and you have 5 credit cards and you want to close one because you don't want to be irresponsible, you close that credit card, your score will go down. It's the stupidest thing, really. And so nobody is taught it, nobody understands it, and so every single individual ends up learning it the hard way.
So someone who's trying to be more responsible with credit is actually penalized through that action. So you think holistic credit care is the category versus kind of the predatory credit repair?
It's how do I not get there in the first place? How do I build credit if I'm 18 and I'm new to credit? How do I ensure that my credit is good? How do I keep track of everything going on so that if I notice any fraudulent activity or inaccurate activity, I'm on it? How do I protect my credit? What are additional products and services that I can keep doing to continue to build that credit? It's an ongoing thing. Credit is never static. It changes weekly, right? Depending on when your score is pulled, your credit can be different by 50 points from one day to the next, just by when it's pulled. Because if it's the day before I pay my credit card statement, I can be 50 points less. The day after I pay my credit card payment, it's 50 points more. People don't know that. People don't understand that. There's still things I learn every single day about credit. The real guru on credit is my co-founder.
Oh, I love it.
And I can hear how passionate you are about this. And I heard you say that you feel a responsibility to do this. Can you tell us more about that?
So I'm an immigrant, and when I came here, my parents couldn't get a cell phone, a car, rent an apartment, anything, because they didn't have credit. And so both me and my co-founders are immigrants. And I think that that's probably one of the kind of internal drives that we have to help people. This product spans significantly beyond just immigrants, but I think that's part of the initial drive. And then just seeing what's happening in the economy with credit and different products and services that I think just make it worse, right? It's fresh. I don't know. It's hard to explain why I'm passionate about it. It's just, I see a disservice being done to people, and it impacts everybody. You can't do anything in the United States without credit. You cannot get a cell phone.
A cell phone, yeah. I was just going to use that example. It's pretty critical to our lives.
And when you look at how irresponsible all the other parties are, it's frustrating.
Can we stay on that story for a minute? So you just mentioned you're from Israel. How old were you when your family immigrated here? And tell us a little bit about that.
I was 4. We came to the U.S. My mom was 9 months pregnant with her 4th child. She had to lie to say she was like 6 months pregnant, so they let her on the airplane. And we came to the U.S. with my parents had $500 cash in their pocket, didn't speak a word of English. My dad is he's the smartest person I've ever met, and he's so resilient. And I think so much of what I've learned is from my dad. And he couldn't get a job, and he's an electrical engineer. And he tried to get a job at different shops to help repair. At the time, it was like DVD players, and no one would give him a job. And so he went in and said, "I will work for free for a month, and if you like what you see, hire me." And of course, not only did he end up getting hired, he ended up taking over the shop, growing the shop, building beyond it, and selling it for over $3 million. Which, coming from nothing and being able to build to that, was significant.
Oh, I love that.
So, what an entrepreneurial story.
Yeah.
Like, I'll work for free and I'll prove myself.
Yeah.
And were you aware of that when you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I learned about that kind of throughout. I don't know what age, but it was definitely a part of our culture and upbringing. And being fiscally responsible was always part of our upbringing too. Like, if I went to the movies, my dad would give me money for the movies and popcorn and not a penny more, right? So everything was always like there's always value to the dollar. We always learn that money is important.
I'm guessing work itself was a huge
ethic.
part of your upbringing.
Yeah, very strong work ethic. It's funny when people say, I work 12 hours. I'm like, I've been working 12-hour days for, I think since I've been like 16 years old, honestly. I can't even remember not working. It's like 12-hour days is not even, that's not the hard part.
Like 12 hours, bring on the 24-hour day.
It's the mental rest of the 12 hours that where it just never stops. That's the hardest part. But
well, there's a lot to unpack there. I want to stay on the immigrant story too here. What is it about immigrants and entrepreneurship? I think there's a theme over and over. We hear and people we talk to. But do you have any insights on what is it about the strong connection? And maybe it's just necessity. But what do you?
I think it is, and I love hiring immigrants. By the way, like veterans and immigrants are my people. But I think that there's so many different aspects, right? You come, especially immigrants to the U.S. I don't know about other countries, but you come to the U.S. with this dream of like anything's possible, right? It's the land of the becoming millionaires and being able, if you work hard, you'll get far and anything's possible. And so, but when you do that, or when you attempt to do that, you realize like it's hard work. You need to put your head down. You need to work hard. You need to be smarter. You need to be more resilient. And I think learning to do more with less and being resourceful are probably some of the more important lessons that you learn as an immigrant. And just you have to stand out. You have to blend in, but at the same time, do a lot more to get there.
Oh, and those attributes, doing more with less and resiliency and effort, and those are all foundational to any successful entrepreneurial journey.
And seeing your parents work hard, right? Like I think that's an important lesson. That's why as a mom, there's always that guilt, and I'm a little bit over it now. It's taken me, 15 years, but there's always that guilt. Like I should be doing more with my kids and I'm like, no, you know what? My kids are learning a very important lesson that that I work hard, that nothing comes easy, that you can do anything when you set your mind to it. And I think that those are just as important as driving them to school every day, right? Like it's not either or.
Okay, I have a 2-part question here. So how often do you have to tell yourself that? Because I experienced that. And do dads feel the same guilt? Dad entrepreneurs.
Well, are we going to let Nirit answer?
Yeah, let's let
Dad answer.
It's the amount of times I tell myself that has definitely gone down every year. I don't tell myself that all that often now. But in the beginning, oh my God, it was like many times a day, right? It's when you're staying late at the office and you're missing gymnastics or you're missing whatever it is, right? A parent-teacher conference and I think for me, I learned over time to be there for the important things. So I'll volunteer for a field trip because initially I volunteered to do things for the school. My thought was like, oh, I can do it at night when my kids are asleep. And then I'm like doing spreadsheets at night for the school. I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing? Like, I want to volunteer for the school to be with my kids. Like, why am I taking on? And so I learned, so I was room mom one year when I felt like it was important for me to bond with the teacher and make sure that, I knew what was going on in the classroom, or I volunteer for field trips, or I make sure that I'm always volunteering at lunch on their birthdays, or, just being there for the moments that matter. Versus the constant day to day. I have a lot of help. I hire and pay for it's the one thing I don't skimp on is help.
I love that. All right, Dad.
Well, I think Nirit hit on something. I can't speak to other people's experience, but I think the support system is if someone doesn't have a support system, I don't know how they start and build a company. That's really hard to do.
Pay for help.
Yeah, well, but that's also a form of support system if you're able to do that, right? But I totally agree. I can't speak that. I do think it's different for men. I definitely think that. I had my own kind of entrepreneurial experience with a lot of hard things and a lot of grind built in there. But my wife ran the show at home, and that's very different for what most. I think especially in the U.S., I think women still bear if they're building a company, I still think they're
still in the driver's seat.
They're still in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And so that's what's hard is, I think that is different in the U.S. and maybe that's true in other countries too.
And there were years in the beginning of my career where I spent more money on help than I made, but I had to have the foresight to know that I was investing in my career and that I would eventually make a lot more, right? But you have to be okay with basically forfeiting your entire salary for someone else to take care of your kids. That's not an easy decision to make.
Amazing.
Yeah. Especially when society is telling you should be taking care of your kids. I think for me that was the hardest thing, was other people's opinions.
That's definitely a message that men, at least my age, didn't receive it from society. I agree with that. There's not the same societal pressure. I'm a good provider by being at work, 15 hours a day, and I don't think that's like the societal story that women receive when they're working, building their same company. So I agree with that.
But at the same time, like, I don't like it when women are like almost perceived as like a victim, right? Like, I think so many times in my career I've been the only woman in the room, and I try to use that to my advantage. Like, I don't look at that as, is it harder to be a woman? Yes. Is it hard? I think the first time in my life where it's actually been harder to be a woman is when I was raising money, honestly.
We're going to talk about that.
But, the rest of the times there are definitely aspects that are harder to be a woman, but I would rather be a woman than a man any day of the year. So I think you have to not kind of be the victim, and I think you have to just take control and charge and just be, right? Like, you just keep powering forward. And I think one of my favorite advice to give women is to think like a man. It's my favorite advice to give a woman.
Why? What do you mean?
Because I learned that in my career. I remember when I was at Green Dot, which is a really big prepaid company, and I was just an individual contributor. And they were hiring a general manager for the flagship division, $270 million division, a publicly traded company. And my boss asked me to interview some of the candidates as not less interview, more just provide them information on the company and, what it's like to work there. And I was meeting these candidates, and I'm like, what? These candidates, yes, they have the Harvard MBA or whatnot and the pedigree, but they suck. And I would go home and tell my husband, like, this is such a joke. These candidates they're not going to be able to do anything. They're going to be disconnected from the business. And he said to me, then go tell them you want the job. And I was like, you're high. I'm like, it's like 7 levels beyond kind of where I am. Not 7, maybe like 4, right? So he said, no, you go in there and you tell them on Monday morning that you want to be considered for the job. And I started thinking, I'm like, he's right. So I did. I went in on Monday morning and my boss laughed at me. He literally laughed. I said, I want to be considered for the general manager position. He laughed at me. And I said, I'm serious. And I will do the job for free for 6 months. I said, don't pay me. Don't give me the title for 6 months.
You took a lesson from your dad.
A lesson from my dad.
Oh, I love it.
I said, I will keep my current title. I will keep my current pay for 6 months. Let me do the job. And I ended up getting the job permanently. And if you listen to earning calls from those days, you'll see that the Green Dot division was the reason the company was doing well. And it was, it's probably one of the most important lessons I think I learned in my career was, and it was like, think like, because as women, we tend to doubt ourselves, or apologize or try and kind of not stand out too much. And I learned that you can't do that. Like, men don't second guess. Men just go in and they think it's theirs to have, right? So think like that.
I love that. I want to talk about the capital raising story, and to connect this, in my journey, I've raised a lot of capital. When I show up, everyone looks like me. I feel like it's always a stressful situation, no matter who you are, to raise capital. I ask people for money, but I always felt like I belonged, which I think a lot of people don't feel that,
right.
And so I want to hear more about that. 1, tell us about what you've raised for Dovely, and then 2, any observations as a female founder, maybe immigrant founder too. What is it that you've experienced that's different? So first of all, start with how much you've raised and the story on the fundraising journey.
So we've raised $6 million, $5.9 million to date. We have held off on raising our Series A for the last really 2 years for the market shifted and I didn't want to raise in this environment. And I would say, and I have said, that I think being a woman actually was for the first time in my life, made it harder raising money. DocSend did an interesting study. I don't know if you guys are aware, but they basically looked at the slides that investors hone in on for men founders versus women founders. And on men founders, the majority of the time spent on the presentation are on their vision. For women, it was the metrics, right? And so I think first I got very, I would say, lucky with Ray Krogan, who was our pre-seed investor, who took a bet on us pre-revenue.
Ray's great. Ray's
amazing. And he loves investing in women, and he's the best investor I have on my cap table. And he, I think he was not intimidated by women, and I don't think he honestly saw men. I don't think he sees men or women. Like, I don't think it's even a thing for him. But when I went to raise my seed round, it was definitely harder. I felt like I had to have significantly more conversations, much more of like an apologetic or a lot of explaining on what I should be doing differently. And, it's hard to sit in a room and being told over and over again what you're doing differently. Or my favorite is when you're getting advice on your deck and 10 people are telling you one thing, and then you present the deck and then 10 other people are telling you to go back to the version you had before, right? It's like, and that's where you have to just learn to take it a little bit with a grain of salt. A lot of these investors they're sharing their perspective, but they haven't necessarily seen it all. If I had listened to my investors, I would be out of cash and out of business right now, right? Because when I raised our $2.5 million seed round, I would meet with our investors and they would be telling me I'm not spending fast enough. You're not investing enough in people. You're not spending enough. You need to hire more high-powered people. You need to be spending more on marketing. And I never did that because I'm very cautious. I'm very frugal. I'm very metrics driven. And luckily that's kept us afloat because we're able to not raise money now during a time where really you shouldn't be raising unless you're dying, I feel like.
Yeah, you control your destiny. Yeah. I want to pull on a couple threads there. One, you mentioned the DocSend study, particularly around raising money, what female founders experience raising money. And tell me if this resonates, and please, I know you'll disagree if it doesn't. It feels like maybe, particularly at the early stages, maybe men get a little more credit for promise, and women are more required to demonstrate performance.
Absolutely, 100%.
Right? So is that kind of the message?
It is, but your past performance is irrelevant, right? Like, I had an insane track record before becoming an entrepreneur.
And maybe that got overlooked.
Completely overlooked. It didn't matter, right? And my husband is Harvard, Stanford, white boy, right? And I joke, I'm like, if you were, I should just make you in charge of raising money because you've got the pedigree. And to some extent I have the pedigree too. Like, I have an MBA from Berkeley and, but it's different. Like, it's just different. It didn't matter. And being in Arizona, whole different layer on top of it all that made it even harder.
Yeah. You have an interesting story about that, about an investor who invested in Dovely despite you being in Arizona.
And being told, like, we're investing in you despite you being in Arizona.
Can you tell us about
COVID changed. So I raised pre-COVID, or really right when COVID started. June 2020 was when we closed our seed round. And so now I think a lot of investors are getting used to investing outside of the Bay Area. But for a long time, the top VC firms really wouldn't consider people outside of Arizona unless they were outside of Silicon Valley, unless they were previous founders or had a track record. It was New York and Silicon Valley. And so there was a lot of like, well, you're in Arizona. And I remember one investor saying to me, you're gonna like be on the cover of Phoenix Business Journal and you're gonna think that's a big deal. And like, that's not a big deal. So we need you to think that being in some tech magazine in Silicon Valley is a big deal. And there was just a lot of looking down on Arizona and people discounting what people are capable of here. And it's honestly, it's pure ignorance because most people are not from Arizona, right? There are very few people from Arizona who are from Arizona. And so you can't make that generalization. People from Arizona are from everywhere. And so and if anything, I think so much of our success has been being from Arizona. I think if I tried to build this company in California, it would have looked very different.